Spring 2028, and the cranes are already swinging over the heart of the airport. At Miami International, construction is tearing into the middle of the building while passengers are funneled through narrowed corridors, boarding passes in hand, stepping around a rebuild that will swallow entire concourses before the decade is out. The airport never closes. It is rebuilding itself while fully open, running 24 hours a day through the dust. But here is what makes no sense. They are spending $14 billion to fix this airport, and not $1 of it touches the reason it is broken. Every project on the list attacks a symptom: the aging escalators, the cramped gates, the tired central terminal. The airport is so starved for space that it is buying up warehouses in the surrounding neighborhoods, roughly 240 acres short, just to find somewhere to park the equipment needed to build. Meanwhile, one single airline still moves more than 6 out of every 10 passengers who pass through, and the entire $14 billion plan leaves that fact completely untouched, which raises the only question that matters. Can you actually fix an airport when one company controls the majority of it and there is no land left to build on? One airline was allowed to grow so large inside a single American airport that it now controls more than 60% of everyone who walks through the doors. And it built that position on purpose, out of the wreckage of 2 collapsed rivals. To understand how Miami got here, rewind to October 1989. American Airlines, under Chief Executive Robert Crandall, had just made a bold move. It opened a brand new hub at Miami International Airport with only 19 flights a day to 6 cities. Crandall had wanted a base in the Southeast for years. Earlier attempts at Nashville and Raleigh-Durham had failed. Miami was the prize he actually needed because Miami was collapsing. The airport's 2 giants were dying at the same time. Eastern Airlines, once headquartered right there in the northeast corner of the field, was crushed by labor unrest and a brutal takeover, and it fell into bankruptcy in 1989. Pan American World Airways, the airline that had literally created the airport back in 1928 on a small plot called Pan American Field, was in its final descent. American stepped into that vacuum and bought the crown jewels. It acquired Eastern's profitable Latin American routes out of the liquidation, including the coveted authority to fly between Miami and London. 2 legends died, and one carrier inherited everything they had built. What followed was one of the fastest hub expansions in American aviation history. The operation grew from 34 daily departures in 1989 to 157 the very next year. By 1992, it had reached 190. American kept transferring employees and aircraft from its failed hubs into Miami, feeding the machine. Cargo told the same story. In 1989, American moved 39.5 million pounds of freight and mail through Miami. Within 3 decades, that figure had climbed to nearly 380 million pounds a year. And the strategy worked spectacularly. Miami became the single largest gateway between the United States and Latin America, the busiest airport in the country for international freight, and the 6th busiest for cargo on the entire planet. Nearly 70 destinations across the Caribbean, Central America, and South America hang off this one hub. No fragmented multi-carrier airport could touch that kind of connectivity, because connectivity is exactly what a dominant hub carrier is built to produce. The concentration that looks so dangerous from the outside was, for a very long time, the source of all the strength. The scale of what that built is almost difficult to picture. Miami International now moves close to 56 million passengers in a single year. It supports hundreds of thousands of jobs across the metro area, with roughly 1 in every 4 jobs in Miami-Dade County tied to the airport in some way. When Fitch reviewed the airport's bonds, it affirmed a strong rating and even improved its outlook, describing Miami as a well-positioned gateway to a growing Latin American market, and noting plainly that American Airlines maintains a dominant market share while the traffic stays resilient. That is the promise in its purest form. One airline, one gateway, 3.5 decades of almost uninterrupted growth. The airline became Miami's hometown carrier, the largest for-profit employer in the entire county, with more than 14,700 of its own people working inside the airport. Everyone believed this arrangement was permanent because for 35 years, every number pointed in the same direction, up and to the right. The airport was built around the carrier. and the carrier made the airport rich. Enjoying this? Do me one small thing and hit subscribe. You won't hear these stories told this way anywhere else. And there is a lot more coming just like it. For 30 years, that one airline was the reason Miami won. No one stopped to ask what would happen when it became the reason Miami couldn't move. Miami International Airport physically cannot add a runway or extend the site it already has because a state highway had to be bent to curve around an extended runway end just to fit. That road is Milam Dairy Road, also signed as State Road 969, and it runs north along the airport's western edge, hugging the perimeter so tightly that its path was shaped around the airport rather than the other way around. To the west of that road sits the Palmetto Expressway. To the south sits the Dolphin Expressway, feeding into a 4-level stack interchange that moves over 400,000 vehicles a day. To the east and north sit residential streets and dense industrial parks. The airport is not next to the city. The airport is buried inside it. This is the trap that 35 years of triumph had quietly built. Every other great airport in America keeps an escape hatch. Denver was constructed on 53 square miles of open plain specifically so it could keep growing for a century. Dallas-Fort Worth, America's own largest hub, sprawls across an area larger than the island of Manhattan with room to spare. Miami has none of that. The footprint is roughly 3,300 acres, and it is fixed, hemmed in on all four sides by roads and homes and warehouses that were never going anywhere. When airport officials talk today about buying land, they are careful to say it is not for new runways and not for new terminals. There is simply nowhere to put them. So the growth that could not go outward was forced to go inward, and that is where the cracks first appeared. The airport that had been engineered around a single dominant carrier now had to absorb that carrier's relentless expansion inside a box that could not get any bigger. American kept adding flights. It kept adding regional jets, and the physical plant, much of it decades old, began to strain under a volume it was never designed to hold. By 2024, the airport was running at well over 100% of its pre-pandemic operations, funneling close to 56 million people through concourses and checkpoints built for a smaller, slower era. The single carrier bottleneck showed up in the most humiliating way possible at a gate complex called D60 in the North Terminal. This was where American parked much of its regional jet operation, the smaller aircraft that feed passengers into the big international departures. The problem was brutal in its simplicity. The gate area had one common boarding space and 17 ground-level positions for those regional jets, and passengers had to walk outside onto the tarmac to physically climb aboard their planes. The airport's own chief executive, Ralph Coutier, described it plainly as a very constrained area, one of the older and more run-down parts of the terminal. And here is the economic knife twist. A normal airport facing this kind of congestion simply builds more gates capable of handling larger aircraft. Miami could not because only a limited number of its gates could take the bigger planes at all, and there was no open land to lay down new ones. Every regional jet crammed into that outdoor boarding pen was a symptom of a deeper disease. The demand was infinite. The concrete was finite, and sitting on top of that finite concrete was one airline that had no reason to shrink and every commercial incentive to keep growing, because Miami had become more critical to American Airlines than ever, its single most important international gateway on Earth. The airport could not stop operating to fix any of this. It runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a non-stop river of Latin American and Caribbean traffic that never pauses long enough to allow a clean rebuild. So it was left with the worst possible combination: a structure it could not expand outward, a tenant it could not shrink, and a passenger load that only climbed. The airport had run out of room to grow. What it hadn't run out of was reasons to keep spending. The $1 billion that will rebuild the most broken corner of this public airport is not coming from the public. It is coming from American Airlines itself. And according to the Miami Herald, the finished concourse will be for exclusive use by American, engineered around the specific aircraft the airline plans to fly. In late February of 2026, American's chief executive Robert Isom stood beside Miami-Dade officials and unveiled the plan. The airline would pour $1 billion into a reimagined Concourse D, tearing out the outdoor boarding pen at Gate D60 and replacing it with a 3-level structure holding 17 modern gates, each with its own jet bridge, its own hold room, and direct access to the customs hall above. Ground breaks in 2027. Completion is targeted for 2030. Isom described Miami as an essential gateway for American, a key part, in his words, of the airline's history and its future. Read the fine print and the real story emerges. The new gates are not sized for the little regional jets that clog the airport today. They are being built to swallow larger regional and narrow-body aircraft, the exact machines American intends to shift into Miami as it reshapes its fleet. A public airport is being physically remodeled to match one private company's aircraft catalog, and because that company already moves more than 60% of the traffic here, a figure American states plainly in its own announcements, no one in the county is in a position to say no. This is the pattern that repeats across the entire $14 billion program. The county is spending its own enormous sums right alongside the airline. There is a new Concourse K rising in the South Terminal, roughly 300,000 square feet, targeted for 2029. There is the total redevelopment of the Central Terminal between Concourses E and G, the demolition and redesign that will play out at the end of the decade. There are more than 200 escalators, elevators, and moving walkways being replaced in phases, along with 126 passenger boarding bridges and hundreds of restrooms. Every single one of these projects is real, expensive, and necessary. And even the demolition has to wait its turn. Concourse G cannot come down until the new Concourse K is finished to absorb its flights, and K cannot rise until the county buys enough neighboring land just to park the equipment. Every fix is chained to the one before it. Officials have identified a shortage of roughly 240 acres, not for gates, not for runways, but simply for the staging areas, the equipment yards, and the construction parking needed to carry out the work. So Miami-Dade has gone on a buying spree in the surrounding industrial blocks, pursuing warehouses and parcels, including one purchase west of the field, valued at around $19 million. The airport cannot expand to grow. It must now expand just to renovate. Meanwhile, the daily reality for passengers has not fundamentally changed. American runs around 400 departures a day out of Miami, pushing toward its largest schedules on record, serving more than 150 destinations across dozens of countries. The airport keeps setting passenger records, climbing toward a target of 77 million travelers a year by 2040. But the delays remain stubborn, averaging around 50 minutes, with more than 60% of them driven by the summer thunderstorms and sheer congestion that no new escalator can fix. The building gets newer. The bottleneck stays exactly where it was. Because notice what none of these projects touch. Not the billion-dollar concourse, not the Central Terminal teardown, not the acres of purchased warehouses. Nowhere in the entire $14 billion blueprint is there a single line item that reduces the share of this airport held by one airline. The ratings agencies say it out loud in their bond reports, describing Americans' position at Miami as dominant, and treating that dominance not as a risk to be solved, but as a pillar of the airport's financial strength. It is a monopoly in everything but name, and it is the collateral the whole plan is borrowed against. Every plan on the table makes the airport newer. Not one of them makes it anyone else's. Institutions almost never fail for lack of money. They fail because it is easier to fund the visible problem than the structural one. Easier to replace an escalator than to question who owns the building it sits in. Miami proves something uncomfortable about every organization that grows powerful by leaning on a single pillar. Once that pillar becomes the foundation of your success, it stops being something you can remove because the whole structure was built around its shape. You can pour $14 billion into new gates, new ceilings, new terminals, and still change nothing that actually matters because the thing that was broken was never made of concrete. It was a decision made in 1989 and never revisited to let one company quietly become the airport itself. Thank you for watching. There is another story already waiting for you on your screen, so go ahead and start it now. And if this one earned it, subscribe, so the next one finds you the moment it lands.